This video comes from BBC Real, the greatest conspiracy in ancient art. Let's see what they have for us here. I wonder what kind of conspiracy this is. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like this.
One of the greatest misunderstandings in cultural history is that classical sculpture lacked color.
It changes your complete perception of antiquity when you see or
Okay, I already know where this is going. and I don't like it. There's a big misconception about this idea of adding color to classical sculptures, particularly in ancient Greece or Rome, that they were using these bright, vibrant colors to make the sculptures look more alive. And it just wasn't the case. That wasn't their view of the world or how to make the most compelling sculptures and paintings. They were much more focused on things that feel alive, that feel harmonic, and that feel like you're actually there with it. So they would have actually used very subtle colors. I think what we're going to find here is that they're going to do some sort of demonstration or something with very bright colors, but yeah, let's find out.
imagine sculptures in color.
Classical artworks would have been a riot of color.
What the hell was that? What was that? All this bright red and blue? What? Look at that. That is not what it would have been. That is not what it would have been. That is absurd.
We have colorful sculpture in Egypt. We have colorful sculpture in European medieval times. Why do we cut out Greek and Roman sculptures?
Some of the most influential artists and writers in history have either ignored or denied the truth about classical art's vibrancy.
So there's this constant marginalization of color, as if it's a bit of an embarrassment.
No, what it's about is that the way that they've done the color now on those examples where they put the color is that it looks like a crappy wax museum version of the sculpture. That's what it's about.
Art historians and archaeologists have solid proof that ancient Greek and Roman artworks were brightly painted.
Brightly painted. Okay. They have proof. I'd like to know what proof that is, because a lot of the ancient, history that we actually have, I would say, suggests otherwise. If you look at the writings of Aristotle, if you look at the writings of Pliny, I don't think so.
This is an archer. It might be the mythical Trojan prince Paris, and the pigments have been identified on the basis of scientific analysis of this piece and of the accompanying pieces in this ensemble.
So this is what always happens. This is what always happens with the art historians. They say that they have some sort of scientific evidence, that it's been discovered, and when you actually dig into these type of things, when you dig into it and look at what the real source is, what evidence did they actually find, it's usually something very minuscule. It's a very small piece of evidence that they then extrapolate and turn into this massive lie, basically, saying that it was far grander than what it actually could have possibly been suggested by the evidence. So with something like a painting, they will take one tiny piece of color from a fragment of the painting, from a very small part, and it contains something that could suggest that there was a slight bit of blue, let's say. Then their assumption is that the whole thing must have been brightly painted with bright, vibrant blue. And that's just not the case. It becomes like a sort of parody. It's just terrible what they're doing in the way that they exaggerate these things. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and assume that it's the same case with these sculptures. They found something very minuscule, some little piece of evidence that they're then going to take and extrapolate and say that that means everything must have been really brightly painted. I mean, it doesn't need to look like a garden gnome just because they had color in it. Come on.
A new exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York explores our Technicolor heritage.
We think it's really important that audiences come to understand that the way they see ancient Greek and Roman sculpture isn't the way it was first created. And that's what we're offering in this exhibition, an ancient world that is suffuse in color, where vivid reds and yellows and gold and blues and greens are part of the fabric of a city.
No, it wasn't like that. It would have been very, very subtle. It would have been just a little bit of color, just a little bit, just something to be suggestive. So maybe if you see this type of sculpture at night, let's say, then it will look like it's an actual person. Or if you see it during twilight or something like that. But it's not like they would have just gone around and completely covered it in color, because then it looks like garbage. Look at this. Look at what they're doing. Why do you think the Greeks would have made such great sculptures and just ruined it with these awful colors? I mean, come on.
Sometimes ancient sculptures were positioned high up on temples, and colour made them easier to see. It also added detail and visual razzmatazz to mythological stories.
Visual razzmatazz. Okay, I guess I'm convinced then, because it would have added the visual razzmatazz.
Working closely with the Met, the Brinkmans were able to reveal ancient colour designs using UV light.
These color materials made for nature are fading in different ways. So, for example, all the iron oxides, all the ochre earth are reacting with the marble and fading very quickly. On the other hand, cinnabar or azurite protected the surface of the marble, and this you can document with UV light.
Natural weathering is the leading thief of classical vibrancy. The Brinkmans acknowledge that their reconstructed sculptures come as a shock to most people, many of whom prefer the weathered, colour-drained versions.
The weathered? What do you mean? Many of these sculptures, the only reason that they even survive is because people saw them as valuable and they intentionally tried to hide them. During the fall of the empire, people would bury the sculptures. So where is the weathering coming from? Gosh. Anytime they say that there's this like scientific evidence, but then the result is something that looks this horrible, you gotta be skeptical. You can't trust that. Come on.
I would like to call them those guardians of good taste. And those guardians of good taste.
Guardians of good taste.
London-based artist David Batchelor has studied and written about how colour became a battleground in Western art theory, with the anti-colour camp often gaining the upper hand. It is a phenomenon which he calls chromophobia.
When I went to art school, which was in the 1970s, which was at the moment of conceptual art in particular, there was no colour. Not only did I not do any colour, I didn't notice that it wasn't being done. I began to read, and the more I read, the more I noticed this pattern of resistance to colour, this tendency to treat colour as other, as feminine, oriental, primitive.
Okay, but look at those things that are in the background. Are those his paintings? Are those what he's making? And this is the guy who has some sway over determining how the ancient Greek sculptures should be colored? Shouldn't that be, you know, a really big red flag right there, that the guy is making modern art with all this color, and his goal is to restore ancient Greek sculptures or decide what color should go into them? Of course he's going to want it to be colorful. I mean, look at what he's doing.
But a hierarchy of value in art theory, taught in official art schools, known as academies, placed the skills of disegno, that is, of drawing, much higher than mere colore, colouring. As history unfolded, the distinction became harsher and more prejudiced.
So when Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo started to produce the concept, the notion, the idea of white marble, unpainted marble, they did it in opposition to the full color scheme of Christian art.
What? What are they talking about? Not everything has to be some sort of stand or like dissent against the art world. I mean, why? They had sculptures before that. Everything wasn't colorful.
The art of the church. So it was a sign of getting liberated from the dogma of Christianity.
No, I don't think it was about the dogma of Christianity. It's just perhaps about what looks better. Those colorful, very colorful paintings where you have, you know, every single person distinguished by particular colors, perhaps, or things like that is part of the reason that they were using them, is to distinguish different characters. If you use a lot of color, it looks bad. It just looks bad to make it so colorful. And people like Michelangelo, people like Titian, for example, actually were aware of what happened in ancient Greece. And in ancient Greece, there were writings that came from people like Aristotle or Pliny who suggested that the blending and harmony of colors is the way to actually achieve the most lifelike effects. The real heart of the Renaissance was actually coming back from ancient Greece, and they were doing this in a way because they were inspired by ancient Greece. So it's not like they were doing this just to make a stand against the current trends of the time. Like, they were doing this because they had a higher goal, a higher purpose. And you can see that in Michelangelo's paintings as well, and in Titian's paintings as well, especially Titian's late paintings. There's not a lot of vibrant colors, except, I mean, of course, in the Sistine Chapel, they've destroyed it. They've ruined those paintings. They've purposely restored them and added far more vibrancy and color than was ever there. So I don't like the way he's using this as an argument.
Greco-Roman society has shaped so much of our world, from our literature, architecture, and our values in politics, philosophy, and law. Its monochromatism is heralded in artistic masterpieces of the Western canon, as well as iconic buildings harking back to the classical style, such as the White House and St Paul's Cathedral in London, which should, if they were authentic to their sources, be multicoloured. Returning vibrancy to the core of the Western cultural tradition will always be a controversial issue and testament to the power and hidden complexity of colour.
Look at that. I mean, just look at that. That looks so bad. It looks so bad.
We don't have the words for colour. We can perceive about 10 million different gradations of colour, but we only have 11 basic colour terms. Yeah, so there's an enormous asymmetry between what we can see out there around here and what we can say. And that's why it's so interesting.
Yeah, so regardless of any of this, there needs to be a consideration made for what actually looks good. Because those types of sculptures that they were showing, which have the color added to them, looks terrible, absolutely terrible. It just completely kills all the life that was in it. It makes it look like some sort of cheap trinket. If you follow the logic of ancient Greece, if you follow the philosophy, the work that was actually made and what has survived, and you look at all that, it wouldn't make any sense that they would go and put such bright colors into it. It doesn't make sense. They had a higher purpose and they had a better understanding of how to use colors to be complementary rather than just completely taking over. So, I mean, what they're suggesting about these bright colors is just completely absurd. It totally ruins the beautiful sculptures that were made. So why would the Greeks ever do that? It doesn't make sense. This whole idea about color, that all of these people in ancient times and in the Renaissance, Baroque period, that they would have been using such bright colors, it is just an excuse to go and destroy great work. It's completely detached from any logic or philosophy that you can actually find. And what evidence do they even have? They never said what evidence there was. They said, oh, you can see it with the UV light. You can see what? I didn't see anything. I don't know what they're basing all of this off of. I'd like to know why they are suggesting that it would have been so bright. It doesn't seem like they have any good arguments. So to me, these are all just excuses to go and destroy great work and to try to modernize it. But it's not anything actually that can be founded in reality. So I think it's absolutely absurd, and it should be proof enough that the sculptures get completely ruined by the color. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any suggestions for a video you want me to watch, feel free to leave it there as well. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.